Impact's Res Ed Chat podcast. Today we have a special RA Chat edition, which is a special RA Chat edition because we have an RA with us today. And so I'm so excited to have Katherine here. We're going to talk about the importance of RAs and student staff members and housing and residence life here on this podcast. And we're going to be diving into something that can make or break your entire year as an RA, which is first impressions, move-in day. So just think about helping students, carrying in boxes and getting to know them. It's also about setting the tone for every interaction that you'll have for the next 9 months with your students on your floor. And so again, today I'm excited to have Katherine here with me. She is a resident assistant here at the University of Texas at Austin. She was talked highly about. And so again, today we're going to be talking about move-in magic, some first impressions, and creating lasting connections from a student staff member themselves. And so Katherine, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Anthony, again for the invite. I am Catherine. I am a rising senior at UT Austin. Go Longhorns. And I am double majoring in management information systems and the Canfield Business Honors program here at McCombs. So there's a lot on my plate, but my number one thing sometimes happens to be my RA job. I was an RA at an apartment complex at UT, but now I am transitioning into a senior resident assistant role. So all that means is I've gone from RA to kind of the leader of the pack of the RAs of where I am working. And so it's been a fun ride so far and dipping my toes into that. I'm super excited to be on this podcast and talk a little bit more about those first impressions because I definitely remember my last year. It was a very pivotal moment in building those relationships with my residents. And so hopefully I'll be able to give some insights onto how to help others do that as well.
Most definitely, Catherine. I'm so excited to have you on this podcast. I remember interviewing you
Yeah.
when you were trying to become resident assistant, and then I did an outreach, and your supervisor was like, "Yes, Catherine would be great." And so to see you flourish in the role and to build community in your building is just amazing and awesome. And I'm glad you get to talk about your experience today. And with that, we're going to go on ahead and get started strong with move-in morning. So move-in is coming up for
Yes.
a lot of institutions and universities. Here we have it move in at the University of Texas at Austin. And so my question for you is what goes through your mind and how do you prepare yourself to be on, commonly these are like 8 to 12 hour shifts. And so
Mm,
how do you prepare yourself to, handle all of that while also meeting a bunch and hundreds of different people at your institution?
yeah, great question. I really take the time the days before to rest up. It is not an easy day at all, especially in Texas heat. It could get up to 100 degrees. And we're usually greeting these parents out in the garage. And so we're outside practically all day. And for those first few days, thankfully, school doesn't really coincide with that. So I'm fully focusing on, preparing myself customer service wise, reminding myself of certain policies that students often forget or parents aren't aware about. That is something that's helped me be a really good conduit of what I think will bridge that connection between leaders, RAs, and residents and families, because they're also a part of the move-in process. And they will also be a huge part of the year. Families, moms, dads are usually the ones calling, asking questions. And so building that relationship with your resident is not building the relationship with them and just them, it's also building it with those families. And so getting myself into a customer service perspective is my number one priority. Getting that rest is also another priority. But also having something fun with the RAs because you are doing this as a team and you're going to get through it as a team. And so maybe building up a really fun atmosphere has been something that helped me get through last year's season. We put on a playlist, we got together the night before and kind of hung out. And so things like that to kind of break the ice even within your own team will kind of flow and that energy will also kind of be contagious and also get to the residents. So if you feel comfortable on your team, the residents will feel comfortable coming to the apartment as well or the dorm or wherever you're situated as an RA.
Yes, I love that. I love that you talk about also just being informed on different things and answering questions because everyone's super excited to come to your respective institution, but those people are definitely going to have questions. And then talking about how it's not just about the students on that day. There are so many stakeholders and key players. You'll have people who are parents, family members, friends, but also different stakeholders across the institution that will be there helping out. And so having that customer service, being ready to go, but also preparing yourself. And so taking that
Mhm.
time. And then finally, just having fun. I think that's one of the most important parts is, you're coming to an institution, you're welcoming new people, and at the end of the day, it should be a fun and exciting moment for all of these people there. And so now we're there, we're at move-in. Catherine, can you walk me through your approach when you first meet a student and their family? What's going on opening, and how do you establish trust with those residents that you're starting to build a community with that you see coming in or to the checkout or picking up their key?
Yes. So I always like to say I did not spend over $2,000 on my smile not to use it. And so there's a lot of investment in this right here. And so I think that's a big part of what makes you so approachable is how you present yourself that day. We find a lot of unity at UT Austin by wearing our polos. That is something that unifies us and makes us big representatives of the university. And so understanding that if you're going to rep that, you better show that. And so just make sure you're kind of conscious of that image all throughout, and all throughout will move out. Move in, not move out, not there yet. Move in all throughout. But a big smile is something that goes a long way. It's a very small detail, but it opens people up to you because they're probably just as nervous of being there as you are. And honestly, I feel like you should be a little less nervous because you know this space. You've probably experienced the dorm life or you've been on campus a little bit more. And so you're definitely at the advantage here in this conversation. And I always like to go in with the perspective of I have a lot to offer. I've lived through a lot these last few years. College is not easy. I have a lot of learned lessons, both great and, lessons that I learned the hard way. And so I always see myself as someone that provides a lot of knowledge. And I think once I took that perspective, I saw myself as someone who is who's going to approach because I have a lot to say in a good way. And so that is one approach that I have. I think also, once again, customer service, customer service, customer service. We are, yes, RAs, yes, we are leaders, but we're also providing the service of a safe space. We're providing the service of a comfortable space. And so you would want to do everything possible. I think about all the things that went through my head my first year coming onto campus and things I would have liked to know. And so putting myself back in the shoes of the customer or putting myself back in the shoes of the resident. I'm talking a lot in terms of business terms like customer and things like that. But really, it's because one, I'm a business major, and two, you know, they're paying a service too. They're paying to be there. They chose your dorm for a reason. And so you want to make sure that they have that experience there. And I know that as a resident myself, I wanted to have a good experience and I better get my money's worth. And so I want to make sure that they're also feeling that by the end of the year. And so those are a couple of things that run through my mind. Big smile. I have a lot to offer. They are customers first, and also thinking of myself of being in the perspective of the customer, being in the perspective of first year. It is not easy. And for a lot of those kids, it's their first time away from home. And so that is what goes through my mind as I'm approaching a family, as I'm out there sweating in 100-degree weather, and as I start looking a little wonky, but all in good fun.
Yes, exactly. And I love that you talk about your business perspective. I think, to also keep in mind to the resident assistants that are listening and the student staff members, you're all earning different degrees at your institution. And so applying what you're learning in your academic settings of whether it be psychology, engineering, business, and being like, oh, here's this customer service model, or, how can I assess the situation? What would work best if I maybe have a smile and you talk about body language and being approachable so individuals can come up to you and ask you questions and, feel as if like, oh, someone's invested in in me staying here. Someone is here to build this safe space, as you've been mentioning. But with that, we have our smile, we have our own body language. My next question for you, and it kind of talks about that, is not every student arrives with that same energy and are excited and have that open body language. They're very closed off, they're shy, they're new. And you find out like, oh, I'm your resident assistant, and they're kind of like, oh, that's cool. And so they're really shy, and some are homesick, and some families are sometimes really intense. Whether it's they're really stressed, there's a lot going on. You mentioned the Texas heat, and so depending on where you're located at your respective institution, there might be some weather things going on. And so, with all of that in mind, how do you quickly assess and adjust your approach when you notice these situations happening on move-in day?
Yeah. The first, I would kind of break this apart into kind of two components. One component would be a shy student, and then the second would be a little bit more apprehensive. So, first, I'll go with the shy student. I have learned to think about this in terms of persistence. Now, there's a certain point where you should probably stop bothering the student. But I always approach a student, once again, with a smile on my face. I use a lot of humor. I am very aware that in terms of like slang, I am like a narc. I don't know if that's like, but we're not, I don't want to ever impose a situation in which they feel like I'm going to be a tattletale or I'm just here to, enforce policies and that's it. I'm also a community builder, and I'm also here to be their support system when they don't have one or when they're building up one from scratch again. And so I feel like breaking the ice with humor, knowing and kind of highlighting, yes, I know I'm in this position and it's okay, like you can interact with me in a fun way. That is one way that I get through to shy students. I think also asking questions. If you just give them a yes or no question, they'll give you yes or no. Maybe give them a little bit more like, oh, how was your ride here? Oh, what are you most excited about? It is not something that they can give you yes or no to. Especially the what are you excited about UT is a question that lights people up. And even if they don't, you really reciprocate that the first time, don't take it personally. Everyone has different personalities. I had to build up a very extroverted personality, but I remember being a first year and not ever wanting to interact with anyone until they kind of earn that privilege and until they kind of show that they're worthy of whatever personality I've got going on. And so don't take it personally if they don't respond the first time. Keep trying and just know that that first impression with that shy student is not going to be the last one. You'll have multiple opportunities to interact with them. And also understand that, if after probably three times, two times, they're not responding to that, maybe they just need their space. Everyone processes that new change differently. And so learning when to step back as well is a key skill to have. And you can do that through body language. You can do that from their responses and how long they are. And so just general human things. So that's the shy student. I think for more, involved students or more apprehensive students or even families that are asking a lot of questions, one, once again, prepare yourself in knowing the ins and outs of the building. It doesn't have to be 100%, but enough that you can give a confident answer and enough that you can be confident in knowing what goes to your manager or what you can do yourself. And so I always like to say if you're not 100% in your response, always, always, always refer to someone that will. And for me, that's my complex coordinator. I always say, you know what, I cannot give you that answer right now. I totally understand where you're coming from. I understand your concern, but I want to make sure I want to give you the best answer possible. And I can refer you to this person, and this person can give you that answer, but I can't do that right now. And if they ask me, well, why? Why can't you? Oh, well, I am also a student. Even though I live here, there's someone just better suited for this. And it's worked 100 times. I think they're always so understanding of that. And it's much better than having to correct that mistake of you giving them misinformation and not in a bad way, but just not knowing, and then having to correct that mistake or having to have those conversations later. And so be 100% in your answers, and that comes from educating yourself. And there should be handbooks or just do your research, maybe ask your leader or ask your complex coordinator or whatever you call it at your institution for those resources. And so that's for the more apprehensive, students and families. I think also not only a smile, but just being confident. There's a certain air that people really like. And so if I see that they're not responding to humor, okay, I'm changing back to my business persona. I am talking very much one-on-one like an adult and not just like as a college student. I'm acting, a little differently. I'm acting a little bit more professionally. And so they respond a lot more to that confident persona. Sometimes, if a joke does not land the first time when someone's feeling wonky, that's when I know it's time to reverse it to professionalism. And professionalism never has failed me. Humor, on the other hand, it's a hit or miss, but it never has. And that is for good reason. You are trying to persuade, not persuade, but, give that sense of confidence, give that sense of, I'm here. I need to move on. Next steps. And so, definitely that professionalism has never, never, ever, ever failed me. Um, Referring to someone else and being honest when I don't know the answer has never, ever failed me. And always being super cautious in the way that you present yourself has never failed me. And so it's a delicate balance, I'm sure. And as a first year RA, it's hard and it's okay if it's awkward and wonky the first few days. I think as you grow in the role, you'll figure it out. And so don't be so hard on yourself if the first five jokes don't land. There will be other opportunities to do that and to kind of adapt to the new environment.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. That was amazing. And I think you gave a really great breakdown of like what that looks like for seeing these different students on move-in day. And there are also so many other students that you'll notice on move-in day that aren't just outside of those, but using those tips that you've suggested and, reading body language, professionalism, keeping that smile, referring to, your complex coordinator, your resident director, manager, whoever it may be, to respond to certain things. And so thank you for that. And one note that you started to end off on was talking about first year RAs. And so that kind of leads me into my next question, which is on kind of first impressions and specifically to the resident assistants that are listening that, may be nervous. This is your first move in and you're listening to this podcast. Catherine, I really want to ask you, what first impressions mistakes do you see some newer RAs make during move in? And what would you tell someone about, their first day on move in? Like, what's some advice that you would give them?
Yeah. I think a lot of what I see is hesitancy to interact with the families or the resident. I think they, I've never had a student say, "Oh, I regretted getting to know my RA." I've heard students though say, "I don't know who my RA is, and I did not know who they were the entire year." And I didn't know that there was a chat. I was like, okay, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I've done my part, you know, and it's up to you, honestly, to make that connection. That's what your job is for. And so understanding that this is your job description. Now, that comes from the disclaimer of even as RAs, we have just different personalities. It is not copy paste personalities for every RA. I have found myself in the RA role to be very extroverted. That is not me across all roles, but in the RA role, somehow I am someone different. In in what I see in more shy RAs, maybe that first initial impression is going to be very hard for you. And all I can really give you is just try. Try to do that smile. Try to really exert yourself because maybe not exert is the right word. Try to push yourself because that first initial try is going to set the tone not just for the resident, but also for yourself. So if you start building those habits of pushing past a little bit more past that shyness, you try that a lot more frequently throughout the year. And so the person that I am today, extroverted, loud, has a lot of personality, that's not who I was when I started this job. It was because I kept pushing myself to interact every single time. And I know that every single time I try to talk to a family, my heart rate would go up. I'd get a little like flushed and things like that. Well, that goes away with time. But if you don't give yourself the time or the opportunity to get past it, you never will. And so just think of that as one, if you're a little bit more introverted. If you're a little more extroverted, I would say remember professionalism. we are still within a role. You can definitely like do jokes and whatever, but always within something that is appropriate, always within something that can be defended by someone else, and make sure that we are always thinking about that we're representatives of whatever dorm that we're doing. And I've stressed that multiple times throughout the interview, but I cannot stress that enough that we are representatives and that we have a certain image to keep up. And then the last thing is if you completely blow it on the first impression, I know they say first impressions really matter and they stick forever. Don't worry if you blow it. It is okay. It is a-okay. I've definitely had a couple of slip-ups, a couple of, I'm sorry that I gave the wrong direction. Actually, you should have gone right instead of left. And it was already a hot day. And so, you can imagine the grumpy faces sometimes that I got and things like that. But it is not the last time that you'll interact with your resident, hopefully. Hopefully, you're doing that outreach throughout the year, setting up programs, getting them connected to chats that are community based. And so you will have multiple opportunities to build that relationship with that person. I know for us, we do fire life and safety checks. That is a great time for me to interact with the resident. Hey, how are you? Break the ice. Hey, I know this is awkward, but hey, I'm here. And it's okay, like, don't worry about it. Sometimes that first impression has really helped me out and build that rapport with them before I have to do any RA duties. Sometimes I'm starting from scratch. Or sometimes, the jokes did not land, the day was hard, and I wasn't able to build a connection. That's totally okay. There's going to be other opportunities. But just make sure that that first impression is not the last impression that you make, because definitely we want to be building that relationship. And it is your role, and it's going to be so much fun. And even if you mess up, you can get back up because when you hit rock bottom, you can only go up. And that's my saying in the role and in life all the time.
Thank you, Catherine. That was great. Thank you. We are running a little bit close on time, but I do want to ask you some quick lightning round questions of some things that you think would be helpful and for our listeners to hear. And so I just want to get these in really quick. But Catherine, what do you think is a best conversation starter with a nervous student?
Yes. What are you looking most forward to at your school?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Mhm.
And then one thing you always carry on you during move-in day.
Ooh, a little fan.
Yes,
Amazon's the way to go with
for
those
the
little
people who are hot and their respective states, a little fan is definitely helpful. And then your go-to way to remembering names as a resident assistant. You're meeting so many people. How are you going to remember these names?
repetition. Hey, name, how are you? Oh my gosh, you're so excited about this? OMG, name. I am so, so excited about that too.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, name. What floor do you live on? Oh my goodness, name. It's my floor too. Finding ways to say their names multiple times in one singular conversation helps a lot.
Yes, agreed, agreed. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. If you would like to let the audience know of a great way to reach you after this or connect with you, you're more than welcome to. But if not, we'll get wrapping up.
I I move in in silence, and so I'm not sure if I have any platform other than LinkedIn. That's the business way to do
Perfect.
it.
Yes,
But yes,
LinkedIn. Of course, the business student is mentioning LinkedIn. So I will be mentioning Catherine on my LinkedIn. So if you're already connected with me, I'll be mentioning Catherine. So if you have any further questions for her, you can go on ahead and send them that way. But again, thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing your insights with us today for our listeners. And again, just remember for individuals like coming up and thinking about move in, first of all, congratulations. You've made it to move in and you've made it past training. But first impressions aren't about being perfect, they're about being genuine, as Catherine has mentioned, prepared, and most importantly, intentional. And so, for our listeners, if you think of any resident assistants who might be a great fit, such as Catherine, to be on the podcast, go on ahead and reach out to me. But we want to say thank you here at Room Packs for again giving us a listen. Y'all have a good one.